What kind of tools does it take to work on a $1 million race car? Today, I'm in the pits with IndyCar to get my hands on some specialty tools to see how they compare to a regular old mechanic's toolbox. Some of these things cost tens of thousands of dollars, and today I'm gonna see why. Welcome to Donut.
Let's give it a quick. There you go.
First, let's talk about one of the tools you're probably most familiar with, and that is the impact gun. Pit crew, when they need to change a wheel, they gotta do it fast, and this thing can deliver a whole bunch of torque really quickly. This one is made by Paoli, and they're the same company that makes impact guns for NASCAR and F1. Now, unlike an impact gun, which we use in the shop, which is electric, this runs off air pressure, 350 PSI to be exact, and it can deliver up to 500 foot-pounds of torque like that. Now, one thing you might notice is that this thing has one big old socket on the end of it, and that's because these are driving center lock wheels. Unlike your car's wheels, which use 5 smaller lugs, this just uses one of them, but that one has to be torqued on really, really tight, which is why you need a gun that can supply a whole bunch of torque and do it real quick. Now, the amount of torque they need to put on that nut is about 500 foot-pounds, and this thing can do it in about 1 second. So loud.
Now, a typical socket will make contact with 6 sides. This socket, however, contacts the lug across 20 individual specialty shaped teeth that engage the lug to help it prevent stripping. It also has 54 individual magnets around the outer edge that lock onto the face of the lug. Not only that, it also is made from very expensive titanium.
If you're curious what one of these costs, the impact gun alone is $10,000. The socket is $2,500, and to service it, it's anywhere from $1,200 to $1,300, which the team has to do multiple times a year. Now, you have one gun for each wheel, and you have 2 sets, one for practice and one for race day. All in all, you're over $100,000 just in impact guns alone. And this is only the beginning of some of the insane tools used in a racing pit stop.
Dude, that's scary.
Cooking in the garage is hard, but thanks to today's sponsor, HelloFresh, I discovered I should be cooking in here. It's called a kitchen, and HelloFresh will ship you the fresh ingredients and tasty recipes you need to become a kitchen powerhouse. Plus, they've got a meal for everyone, whether it's veggie or carb smart or family friendly, nobody will be left hungry. With like 40 recipes, you'll never be bored. Plus, those recipes are customizable, so go ahead and swap out your potatoes or upgrade to organic beef. It's your meal, so make it your way. With meals from HelloFresh, I've saved so much money by not going out every time I'm hungry. Plus, they helped me figure out what this whole room was for. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code DonutMedia65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com. Use code DonutMedia65 for 65% off plus free shipping.
So we know how to take a wheel off, but how do we get the car up in the air so that we can take that wheel off? Well, this is an air jack, and this is a super, super cool piece of equipment used to get an Indy car off the ground. The reason this thing is so long is because there's a port underneath the car which this plugs into, and it uses 450 PSI of air pressure to raise the car up in less than 1 second. Now, the jacks are built into the car, and this is just an external thing that they can plug into and operate the system. Depending on the guy who uses it, he'll cut custom grip tape and put it where he's gonna be grabbing onto it to give him as much grip as possible, because you wanna make sure you stick it in there right perfect every time, because seconds is money. And there's 2 sets of these jacks. There's a race set, and then there's a practice set. And the practice set has a little valve right here, and this allows them to control that airflow so they can slowly raise or lower the car. But during the race, you want it as fast as possible. So this just gives you all 450 PSI in a blink of an eye. Pretty cool.
Now, we couldn't even get some of the prices on some of these tools. They were confidential, but let's just say if they're not going to tell you the price, then it's probably pretty expensive.
When it's time to fill up your IndyCar, what do you use? use this. This is a fuel filler, and it feeds fuel at about 3 gallons per second. So you can fill an entire car up in 6 seconds. And when I say gasoline, I mean E85 ethanol. IndyCars use E85, not standard gasoline like you and I. Now, a regular gas station pumps at 13 gallons per minute. So it would take you a minute and a half to fill up a tank versus 6 seconds with this thing. Pretty impressive. Also, it does that using gravity. There are no pressurized systems in here. They're not allowed to use that. So it's just gravity fed straight into the tank. When you plug this in, it triggers a switch which allows this valve to open, which triggers fuel to flow through. When you're done, you pull it back out and that switch closes so you don't spill gas all over the place. Back in the day, they didn't have that system. You got a lot more leaks. That leak could get on something hot, cause a fire, not good. The fueler needs to know when he's got to pull this out. And they have a little cool system right here with a sight glass. There's a diaphragm in here with a little red indicator. That indicator will lay down and then stand up when the car is almost full, and then the guy can pull this out and the car can take off. And this thing's heavy. You gotta be pretty buff to use this thing. It weighs a ton. This looks like a Ghostbuster thing. Just suck in the spirits. Now, just to start an IndyCar requires a bunch of specialized tools, starting with this thing right here. Now, this is nothing more than just a chunk of metal that's got an electrical socket on the end of it. You plug it in and this heats up. You put it down in the engine, it heats the oil up, and that's really important because you need that oil to be at a specific temperature before you can even start the engine. The next thing you have to do is pressurize the cooling system. So these are a special tool that allows to check the level and the pressure of that entire cooling system. All the while, a guy has a computer hooked up to the car that's reading all sorts of variables and sensors to make sure that it's good to start. And then when they go to start it, they use something like this. Oh my God. Now in your car, you have a starter that's attached to the flywheel of the car. It's connected to the crank. When you turn the key, it engages and it starts your car. Indy cars, they don't like that. That's heavy, takes a big old battery to do it, and it's just cumbersome, so they do it off board. Now inside here are 3 12-volt car batteries wired in series for 36 volts that get sent all the way through this wire into the back of this big giant motor. Now right here is a 3-foot shaft that they need because they gotta have distance to get to the flywheel from the back of an Indy car. And once they insert that shaft, it just starts with this one button. And it's a lot of torque. I just almost broke my wrist. So compared to a starter in your car, which might be a couple $100, this thing, $10,000. And that's not including any of the other tools necessary to start one of these Indy cars. Now, in addition to some of these standardized tools, this team has a lot of individual specialty tools that are good for one particular purpose. For example, this is a spring compressor. So when they want to make suspension changes or spring changes or preload changes, they can load their shock and damper system up in here, compress it, then they can set whatever parameters they want for that shock and spring setup. And the reason they have it this way is because it allows them to do that very quickly. They can take it off the car, put it right here next to this trackside bench, work on it, put it back on the car. Now, one thing a race team can do is take an off-the-shelf tool like this DeWalt air blower and custom 3D print pieces to make it suit their particular application. So for example, they use this, they hang it on the side of the car, and it blows air into the radiators to cool the car when it comes into the pits. They also have one that's very similar where they just use a DeWalt battery and 2 big fans, and they hook these over the brake ducts with a 3D printed piece that mates up perfectly to cool the brakes. Got a Mac tool, Snap-on, Craftsman, just going through some guy's toolbox. And that brings us to one more really important piece of equipment, and that's your standard toolbox. You got your sockets, your hex heads, wrenches, screwdrivers, ratchets. All these things are used to prep the car while they're in here in the pits, take off body panels, replace suspension components, rip out the gearbox. They can do all of that with a nice, good set of tools. And looking at these tools, it's nothing crazy different than a set of tools that you could buy or that we have in our shop. So even you could work on an Indy car with a set of tools like this.
So it's hard to really calculate the true cost of this toolkit, but it's easily hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. But even you have some tools that a $1 million race team has, and that's in your standard toolbox.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want to thank Rahal Letterman Lanigan Race Team. They let us come see all this stuff. I get to pick up expensive tools. It was a whole lot of fun, so check them out as well. Thank you guys so much. Bye for now.